Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we is Yevamot daf Samach Dalid. We are going to begin on the last line on Samach Gimel and Beis. Tanaban. Uvenucha Yomi Shiv Hashem Revus Alpha Yisrael. So what do we learn out from this famous pasuk that we say when we put away the Sefer Torah on Shabbos and during the weekday? So on the Gemara says on the top of Samach Dalid and Aleph, Malamed. This teaches us Shein Hashchina Shoyra Al Pachos Mishtei Al Lafim Ushnei Ruvavais Yisrael. That we need to have at least 22,000 of Klal Yisrael, Shnei Lafim, 2,000, Shnei Ruvavais, 2 myriads. Hari Shahay Yisrael, Shnei Lafim, Shnei Ruvavais, Chasar Echad. If we say there's even just one missing, Mazel Osig before Rivia, and the person didn't have this child, so this one person makes all the difference, that the Shechina will not be sure among Klal Yisrael. In fact, this person who is not Isaac and Puravu is going to be Chayiv Misa. Shnemer Uvanimu Hoyulahem, which is referring to Nadvan Avihu. The punishment is because they didn't have children. Mashma Hahoyulahem Banimu Mesu. They wouldn't have died otherwise. The Shechina is removed. Shnemar L'yoyselcha L'Elokim U'Zaracha Charecha, and your children afterwards. B'zman she'Zaracha Charecha, when you have children, Shechina Shara. Ein Zaracha Charecha Al Mi Shayra Al Eitzim V'Alvanim. So what's it going to be? The Shechina is going to be Shara on wood and stone. Fine. New Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, Nasa Isha, person gets married, and V'Shah Imoy Eser Shanim. He waits with her for 10 years. In other words, they try to have children and they're unsuccessful. Lo Yolda, Einu Rashai Lavatal. He's not allowed to be Mavatal. Says Rashi, Ella Oigar Shena. You should divorce her. O Yisa Cheresima. He can marry a second wife. Girsha, if let's say he divorced her, so Muteris Linase L'Acher. She's still allowed to marry someone else, because Lav Davka, it's her that was the reason why they couldn't have children. And the second guy also waits for 10 years, the same amount of time. If let's say there was a miscarriage, which clearly shows that she's capable of getting pregnant, but she just couldn't carry the child to term, it's from the time of the miscarriage. Nasa Isha, you married a woman, and again, you wait for 10 years, doesn't have kids, so ksuba. So again, you can divorce her. However, you still have to give her ksuba. Why? It could be his problem why they can't have children. Here's a hint. It says in Bereshis, Miketz Esther Shanim was Shevis Avram, Beretz Canaan, that after 10 years of being in this land, and he was married to Sarah, and then ultimately afterwards, as we know, as Rashi says, Ba al Hagar, then he ended up having a second wife. He didn't divorce Sarah, and of course ultimately he had a child with her, but because they didn't have a child for so long, so he took another wife. Lomadcha comes to teach you, Shein Yeshivas Chutzlaretz Oilum in a Minyan, that why is it mentioned specifically after the time of he was Eretz Canaan for 10 years? It must be because the din is Chutzlaretz doesn't count. And therefore, we're going to see from here also, in a second, if there's any other mediating factor which can contribute to the fact that they couldn't have children, then we say that's the reason, and therefore that we don't hold that she just can't have kids with him. If he's sick, he or she's sick, let's say they're locked up in jail, away from each other, in oilim and a minyan, doesn't count. So again, if we can understand the reason why he or she can't have a child, which includes even being sick, and the question is, what does that mean, being sick? Is that maybe there's some illness which prevents them from having a child, so therefore that won't count. It's just the fact that you're not able to have a child, even though really technically you could, maybe it's some type of a sign from Hashem that you're not supposed to be married to this woman, or that you should be trying to have a child with another woman. Why don't we learn out from Yitzchak and said that what? We're going to see that he actually waited for 20 years before, and he didn't marry anyone else. We know that Yitzchak didn't have any other wife. He Yitzchak ben 40 shana, he was 40 when he took Rivka. Yitzchak was 60 years old when Yaakov and Esau twins were born. So we see clearly that Yitzchak didn't wait 10 years, he waited 20 years. So Yitzchak Akar Hoya. Because Yitzchak was the one with the issue. He was incapable of having a child. It says Rashi Yodeya Shemachmas Atzmahu. It was because of him, and therefore that's the reason why. He waited that long. We know Abraham was also as an Akar, as we'll see later on. So how can he went out 10 years from him? The problem wasn't her necessarily, it was him. So Huma boile with Rabbi why are the years of Yishmael calculated at all? Why do we need to know how old Yishmael was when he died? We do it in order to be able to find out other calculations, the years of Yaakov. Okay. Says Rashi, Liaches behen Leida Shenoisa Shel Yaakov ben Kamashanim Hoya. How old was Yaakov Kishaholach Beis Aver when he left the house of Shem Aver after he left his father? Uksha Amad al Be'er when he was standing by the well. And it's brought down in the end of the first parak of Masechtas Megillah, Daf Yud Zayin, explains all of this and ends up blurting out V'hai krad Yitzchak ben Shishim Shana Ma'isilo. You'll out from the fact that he was 60 when he had these children. Tasem Yalfin ben Gadol Tamatayim Mekibad Av Aim Shekol Oisim Shanim Shah Yaakov Beis Aver Lo Nanish Aleim. So the truth is, he was in Shem Aver for an extended amount of time, for 14 years, and that wasn't considered part of the punishment, if you will, for being away from his father for such an extended period of time, because Talmud Torah is greater than Kibbud Avim. Ayin, the Gemara over there in Masechtas Megillah. Anyway, so that's the whole reason why it's mentioned, is in order to figure out all these other calculations. Exactly how old was he, again, when he was at Shem Ve'aver, and how long he was when he finally met Rachel at the well. Fine. Avraham was an Akar, and so was Yitzchak. Couldn't have kids. Shnemer beyetar Yitzchak Lashem noichach ishto al ishto lo nemer elo noichach. Why is the opposite? Malamed sheshneim akurim hoyu. It wasn't just that his wife was an Akar but couldn't have a kid, but he also had the same problem. Yachi veyater lo veyaser lahem miboyle. It should say lashon rabim that they were both barren. Because you cannot compare the tefillah of a tzaddik, which is Yitzchak, whose his father was a tzaddik, to the tefillah of a tzaddik ben Rasha. Because, again, Yitzchak, he was a tzaddik, and even though it's true that his wife, Rivka, was a tzaddikis, but her father, Besuel, certainly was not a tzaddik by any stretch, or was her brother. So therefore, that's the reason why his tefillah is more accepted. That's what we learn, because the tefillah is powerful. It says Rashi, tefillah so shoyed tzaddik ben tzaddik, le tefillah so shoyed sadekes bas rashel afikach toilu bo hakosov. So therefore, it hangs upon him, like he was the one that was answered. Some people say it's noichach ishto, that he prayed on her merit, and she prayed on his merit, and therefore it would be like a flip on everything we just said. Rav Yitzchak, the question is, why exactly would a tefillah of a tzaddik ben tzaddik be better? After all, don't we say that b'makam shabali tshuvan oimdin, so we should give her a lot of credit? So again, when it comes to tefillah is the element of hachna. Rabbi Zweig explains is an element of humility, and the better person who is able to humble himself is someone who is just like his father. It's like a shadow to his father. When it comes to Rivka, although certainly she was great, but the problem was that she stood out more because she was great despite her father and her environment, and therefore that is not the attribute of tefillah, which again is hachna, of humility, because again that shows like you have a sense of self, as opposed to anaycha offer ba'efer, which is what tefillah is. Why couldn't they have kids? Why would Hashem do this? Gemara says, because Hashem loves the prayers of the tzaddik. So sometimes Hashem holds things back, not because He hates us, because He wants to develop us. This is also Gemara in Sukkah. Did it say that somewhere? So in the middle of a difficult Gemara in Masechta Sukkah of Boitziligas, Koitziligas. So why is tefillah like a pitchfork? That a pitchfork brings grains from one side to the next. Kach tefilasan shel tzadikim hafeches midas shel Kadosh Baruch Hu midas ragzonus. I don't think it uses that language over there. Midas rachmonus. I think it uses achzorus. So midas ragzonus, midas rachmonus. So again, he's able to change and flip over the approach and mindset and trajectory of what Hashem was going to do to us. It says that Avraham and Sarah are actually tumtumim. Now, tumtum, pashib shat, if this is what it's referring to, is someone who doesn't have the basic sexual organs, or it means at the very least that they're not able to reproduce. Shenemer habitu el tzur, look upon this tzur, this rock, as we continue to Samach Dal Beis. Chutzavtem, which it's hewn, the el makeves bor nukartem, and that of the pit. Rashi says naselo zachros nukartem, naselo nakvos. It became female. Uksiv hibitu el Avraham avichem vel Sarah telelchem, that they gave birth. Go and gaze upon them, that they're still able to give birth. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rabbi Boravua Sari Menu Ionis Haisa. Sarah also was not able to have kids. She was an Ionis. Shenemar v'tihit Sari Akara ein lavolad. She was barren. She couldn't have kids. I feel base vlad ein la. It means even the base vlad, the place where a child would be, also it was not. In other words, she basically lacked some of the basic female organs, a uterus and the like, apparently, to be able to even potentially have a child. Now going back, when we said 10 years is the cutoff point, that's only the earlier times, Shinosan Merubais, because they lived a very long life. So therefore 10 years is a long time, but okay, you still have a lot more to live to be able to have children. In the later generations, we live a much shorter amount of time. You only have 2.5 years. Opposite 3 pregnancies. So if a pregnancy is 9 months, 9, 18, 27, so that is a little bit more. 2.5 years is 30 months. So you say 3 pregnancies and maybe a month in between, etc. So that's it. Rabbi Omer Rab Nachman Sholosh Shanim. Actually, you only have 3 years. Keneged Sholosh Bekidos. Opposite the 3 mentionings of how Hashem remembered women who were barren, says Rashi. Shakadosh Baruch Hu Poikin HaKaros Lishmot Tfilasim Rosh Hashanah Begoizelehen Hiroyin. Who are these women? Yomer Mar Rosh Hashanah Nifkedu Sar Rachel Chana. Sar Rachel and Chana were answered on Rosh Hashanah. Omer Rabba Leisnu Lahani Kloli. We don't listen to any of these rules. Let's think about it. Masnisaman Talkin. Who was masakin this Mishnah of the 10 years? Rabbi. But being made David, already before that, in the times of David, the pasuk says, it says you're only 70 years old. So when we say 10 years, it's not obviously referring to when people used to live until 500 or 300. It talked about even the times when people lived 70 years. So 10 years is the cutoff. So he said, you know what? There's a big problem because maybe he's not going to be zoich to have children from her. But maybe it's she that's not going to be zoich. In other words, how do we know that it's her problem? Maybe it's his problem. Whereas she doesn't have to leave for that reason because because she's not mitzvah in the mitzvah of having children. Obviously, we need women to have children, but the chiyuv is on a man. The chiyuv is on a man to have a child, and therefore, it says Rashi, lo ichvis la, lo anash la kutchabrichu al avoynaseha. So they're not going to be punished. So therefore, the issue of her being in a relationship without children is not going to be as problematic as the man. Eini frak the Gemara, v'ha amru li rabbanan Rav Abba bar Zavda, notziv isasa, marry woman, v'olad b'nei, and have children. V'yarmulahu, and he said to him, Izakai, if you're Zaycha, Havili Mikamaita, you should be Zaycha from my first wife. So, L'chayr we see that what, says Rashi, Amasnisim Parach, the Katani Yisacheres, marry a different woman, Shema lo Zacha lihibanos memena v'yizkel lihibanos min ashniya, and you'll end up being Zaycha from the second. So he says, no. L'chayr we see that you should hopefully have from your first wife. Where it says no, Hasam dichui medachilu rabbanon, the Rav Abba bar Zavda, Ikara mepirka the Rav Huna bar Gidol, Rav Gidol Yaakov mepirka the Rav Huna, Rabbi Chelbo Yaakov mepirka the Rav Huna, Rav Sheshes Yaakov mepirka the Rav Huna, Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Okay, stop there for a second. So because they stayed in the shiurim, even though they had to use the bathroom, but they didn't leave in showing reverence to their teacher, that actually caused them to become sterile. And because of that, this was almost like a way of like making them feel good. But we already knew that they weren't able to have children anyway, and it was their issue. Rav Acha bar Yaakov achtate soskinta, that when it came to Rav Acha bar Yaakov, he had this illness, says Rashi, mi'oitzer hashesen v'adam neker himanu. Again, he became barren because of this illness. Taluya ba'arza debei rav, so he was literally hanging by the cedar tree. But nafik mini kuhutza yarka, and it came out from him this greenish something that which is green. Yaro kikaf tamar, just like the palm which comes of a date palm tree. Rav Acha bar Yaakov shitin tzabe havina, 60 sabi there were. The kulhu iakru mepirke, the Rav Huna bar, they all were barren. Labar ma'ana de kaimi benafshoy, excluding this one who was mekayim on himself, hachachma techaya baleha, that the wise one the husband will live. So again, it's possible that a lot of these people, they were barren, and therefore it was the issue of the man. Girsha muteres, so if she gets divorced, she can marry a second man. Now, sheni if she wants, she can marry a second time. How mash mashlishi lo, not a third time. So masnisa mani Rabbi he Tanya mal harishain umeis sheni umeis shlishi lo somo. Let's say you did mila to one child and he died, and then you did mila to a second child and he died. So shlishi lo tomo diva Rabbi. So Rabbi holds that chazaka is really at 2 times. At that moment, you should not do a meal on this third child, because you already see this pattern that the first 2 children died. Divi Rabbi, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer shlishi tomer v'lo tomo, which again, according to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, the chazaka is at 3. We heard the opposite. So heminayu acharin yasa. Which one is later? Which of these Mishnayos was learned later, that we can rely on that one? Because typically we follow the later edition, which is usually the more accepted version. There's a story of 4 sisters. Bitzi Pari, Shemol Rishaina, they did a milah for one child, umeis. Tragically, the child died. Shnei umeis, shlishis umeis. Revius, the 4th one, Basel if they were Bishop ben Gamliel, Armela al Tamoili. So he said that by the 4th child, Rosh Hashanah said don't have a bris milah. So l'chayra, it's a raya that it's this statement Rosh Hashanah holds. It's 3 is a chazaka, and then the 4th one already no longer have a bris milah. He says no, that's not a raya. But Dilma he asked his shlishis nami havi armela. maybe the truth is if they would have asked the third time, he would have said the same thing. It's just that no one asked him a shaila. You can't derive what he holds because the fourth time is when he was asked. Maybe if he was asked the third time, they would have said the same thing. So im kain ma as haduse de Rav Chiya bar Abba. What's the testimony? The fact that he's giving edus must be its dafka. V'dilma hakamashmon. Maybe he's come to teach you the achayos machaskois. Maybe he's going to tell you that sisters create a chazaka. Says Rashi, hechi. The isha muchzekas begimel pamim. It's the same woman with her 3 kids. Kachi muchzekas b'shosh achoseha. So too, if it's each woman of 3 sisters, and they all have a son, so they could also create a chazaka by each of the 3 children, 1 for each sister. If it's true they can make a chazaka from sisters, you should be careful not to marry from a family if they have various illnesses like epilepsy or leprosy. If it's 3 times. So again, this is the reason why we have something called Doryasharim, that where we investigate to make sure that we know that this relationship is going to potentially have healthy children. Because if we see that there is something wrong in a particular family, then they need to be aware of it. My Havala. So what is the maskana over here? What is the final word? So Kiyasa Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef Amar Uvda Havi Kamed Rav Yochanan B'Knis the Ma'oin. So such a story happened, and it happened to be Yom Kippur Shacholias b'Shabbos. So it was Yom Kippur, was on Shabbos. Umola Rishayna Umes. They did a meal, and the first child died. Shni Umes. Shlishis Bolafana Barmula L'chi Moili. So he said, go and do a bris meal again for the 3rd time. Amalei Abai Chazi de Kisharis Isura V'Sakanta. So he said, I see that you're allowing Isser and Sakana. What is the Isser? Says Rashi. Mila Shlo B'Zmana Ve'enu Daiches Shabbos. Says Rashi, She'im Chazaka B'Shnei Pamim, the Shlishi Nitna Lidchais Mimena Havi Me'ila Shel B'Zmana. If we've already established a pattern that this child's dying, so this is no longer a normal situation, and therefore it's considered to be a Me'ila Shel B'Zmana. You shouldn't do the Me'ila now, it should be pushed off, and therefore if you're going to do it now, it's not supposed to be done on Shabbos, or certainly not on Yom Kippur. It can only be done on Shabbos if it's a meal b'zmana. Also, sakana, you're causing sakanas nefashos. Samacha Abaya, so Abaya relied on this, as Rashi, the tlos zimni hu dehavi chazaka, that 3 times is considered to be a chazaka. Ve'azol natzva l'chuma, and he ended up marrying this woman by the name of Huma, Barata, who was the daughter of the Isi Berei de Rav Yitzchak, Berei de Rav Yehuda. The Natzva Rachba b'Pomadisa, she married Rachba Pomadisa Shachiv, and he died. Rav Yitzchak Berei de Rabbi Rav Chana the Shachiv, and he died. And then V'Natzva Hu, and then all of a sudden Abaya decides to marry her Ushchiv, and then he dies. So even though she had 2 of her husbands die, so Abaya still felt, you know what, I'm going to marry Huma. It turned out that Abaya died while he was married to Huma. So Amar Rabba, is there someone that would actually do like this? He's the one who said that you can rely on this logic. Yitzchak sumcha la bar samcha. You can say he is Yitzchak sumka la bar samcha. Avin yeshnu b'chazara, Yitzchak sumka inu b'chazara. Says Rashi, what does that mean? Avin the samcha, Avin had smicha. Mashi Amar Avin mishum Rabbi Yitzchak yesh lismachalav. You can rely on it. Yeshnu b'chazara, Chayzer al Talmudo. He reviewed his learning. V'loshen acher matzui kol shol lefnei Rabbi Yochanan. He was constantly found in the presence of Rabbi Yochanan. V'im chazer bo, Rabbi Yochanan mishum davar she'aymer tefila techila shameh Avin v'chayzer gam huboy. Avol Rabbi Yitzchak inu matzu lefanav. He wasn't found by him. Upamim sheshama davar Rabbi Yochanan. Sometimes he heard something from Rabbi Yochanan. L'machar chazer bo Rabbi Yochanan. He retracted v'einu a day. He wouldn't have known this. Ba'od, and furthermore, Amar de pligi in Mila. Maybe they only argue regarding Mila. Do you wait 2 or 3 times? B'nesuin mi pligi. Maybe they don't argue when it comes to nesuin. when it comes to marriage and the husband dies. So we see that Rabbi also holds a chazakas too, and the third time the guy shouldn't already marry her if her husbands have died before. So we see the machlokas is also by marriage. I can understand by a bris milah the problem. Some people have thin blood, some have thicker blood, so the blood can congeal, a person could bleed to death, chas v'shalom, and this is all hereditary. Just because she was married to someone and they died, it's happened a couple times, what does that have to do with the third husband or the fourth husband? It's her spring, namely her makam erva, her womb. Somehow that is with tashmish is what has somehow caused the death of these men. Exactly how we understand that, again, you can maybe obviously fast forward to there's various diseases, like nowadays tragically there's AIDS, so it's very possible maybe you can learn ma'ayin garim that there's something about having tashmish with her that it could be some deadly virus that kills all of them. Rav Ashi Omer Mazel garim. It's just her luck or bad luck being married to these men, and that mazel will affect all men. Doesn't matter even if they never had tashmish. Just getting married to her is bad mazel. So that's why we say maybe mazel tov. So my binayu, what's the chiluk? So ibinayu the ersa umeis. Let's say he died b'shas ersin, so he never had tashmish with her. So that can't be the reason. But nonetheless, it's mazel garim. Inami the nafal medikla umeis. We see that he fell off a roof, or he fell off a date palm tree and he died. So obviously he didn't die because of her, because of having tashmish with her, but because of her mazel. Okay, let's stop for 1 second. All right, let's stop for a second. Question 1: Avin de samcha Yitzchak sumka labar samcha. So we said Avin was someone you can rely on, and Yitzchak sumka was not someone you can rely on. Avin yeshnu b'chazara. Avin reviewed his learning. Yitzchak sumka ein b'chazara. However, this other guy didn't. So ma perish yeshnu b'chazara. What does it mean that he reviewed? So either chayzu al tamudo, Pashut, Rashi said he reviewed his learning, or matzul lifnei rabo, he was constantly found by his teacher. Mim chazer rabo mima she'amer tchila shemei b'chayzer gamhu. That if, let's say, because he's with his teacher, maybe his teacher said something and he retracted his statement, but if you're never around him, you're only here so infrequently, you wouldn't have known his retraction. The fact that he's always by him, therefore that's enough more of a reason that he should be supported. Question 2. Be'elu fanim hanafkamina bein lamandi omer ma'ayin garim lamandi omer mazel garim. So we said again, if he ends up dying after only erison, or that he falls from a date tree, some tree, and dies. So again, it's nothing to do with tashmish. It has to do with just bad mazel, which is also TA 17. Isha Shashanas Gimel Pa'amim Umesu Baleha Alidei Shasalik Ladikul of a Nafel Im Tinasu Ravi. Can you marry a fourth time? Umadua. So again, the question is it totally on if you say the issue is Mazel Garim? No. If it was Ma'ayin Garim, then yes. Okay, let's continue. Armalei Rab Yosef Bereda Rava L'Rava. Boy Minema Rav Yosef Halacha Karebi. So he asks the question, is the halacha like Rabbi? Regarding chazaka, that it's even after 2 times. The Amrli ain't halacha k'Rav Shimon Gamaliel. He said the halacha. He said, is the halacha not like Shimon Gamaliel, who says the chazaka 3 times? The Amrli in yes. So he started to laugh. Amrli lo samatihi upashit loch. Says Rashi lo sichek b'cha stumois shel Mishnah. Don't laugh at the hidden pieces of the Mishnah. Sometimes we hold like him, sometimes we hold like him. Sometimes the chazak is 2 times, sometimes the chazak is 3 times. So when do we say 2 times the chazak, 1 times 3 times the chazak? So Gemara says like this. It says, Pashalach Nisuin umalkiyos karebi. When it comes to getting married, or like Rabbi, even 2 times is enough. So therefore, what? That a person is allowed, says Rashi, Rashai Hasheni, Sheni in Shlishi Lo. So she can get married only to the second time, but once her husband a second husband dies, she can't get married a third time. And also when it comes to Malkus. So the din also is, the chazaka is 2 times. Vestois, V'shar HaMuid, Kersha B'Gamuyel. When it comes to a vest, and when it comes to a Shor HaMuid, whether it becomes from a tam to becoming a wild animal, paying Chatzi Nezek, the Nezek Shalom, as it brought down at the beginning of Masechtas Baba Kama, is 3. So, Nisuin, let's break this all down. Had Amr, we talked about that. If he dies, and then he dies, another man dies, so it's only up to 2, but not 3. Malkios, what's that? Did not. Mishal Lakav Shana, a person who got Malchus, and then he sinned again. So based on Kaitanos Lakipa, so at that time we already put him into like this box, into like a jail. We give him barley, literally I should take kreso nivkas until his stomach explodes, says Rashi. If he sins a third time, we can already, from the time that he sinned, he's already got Malchus twice. So if he sinned again a third time, we're not going to give him Malchus anymore. We already just lock him up. Now that's by 2. Vestois ditnan ein ha'ishas. We continue to Samach Hamad Aleph, which is primarily it's discussing in Masechtas Nida, a woman who has a vest kovas, a woman kovas or veses, a woman who has a set time that she always sees dam within a certain time every single month. So she has a vest kavua. So we say ad shtivkena sholosh pa'amim. It has to be those 3 times. When she saw dam, says Rashi, lismach alehel yois dayashaita. As it says in the beginning of Masechtas Nida, Rashi quotes, Kol isha sheishul aveses dayashaita v'lo lo mafreya me'es la'es. So normally when a woman, at least the Gemara over there doesn't talk about for tashmish, for that we're not strict. But when it comes to eating kudshim, so that is where we're concerned. And therefore there's a machlokas beishama, the machlokas Shama and Hillel over there, even though we don't pass like either of them, whether or not we say dayashaita. In other words, if she sees dam, do we say we only assume it's from that moment on, or do we say, as according to lahalacha, not like Hillel, it's mepikida meis la'es. So therefore, if she, for example, on Sunday did a bedika and she didn't see any dam, and then on Tuesday, and then on Thursday she sees dam. So the question is, so we say we don't go all the way back to her or past Pekida all the way to Sunday, but we say meis la'es. She has to wait 2 periods, which are 12-hour times, to onos, and as a kanas, and therefore she has to wait 24 hours. Everything 24 hours before is tameh. So when it comes to a vest, we say that a woman who has a set time, we say dayashaita, because it's understood that if somehow we see that she sees dam, we're not going to assume, oh, you know what, she didn't do her bedika. She's supposed to do bedika in the morning and at night, twice a day, so she didn't do it. So we're going to kanas her. No, because she typically has a vest kavua, so therefore we're not going to assume that she saw dam before that. We're going to say dayashaita, and things are only telling me from this point forward, but not back. And that is, how do we know a woman is a vest? It has to be that she saw it 3 times. Vein mitaheres min haveses ad sheti'aker mimena sholosh pa'amim. And again, that we do not say she's purified or removed from her being a vest until 3 times. Okay, until there's this new pattern. V'shar mu'ed nan ein hashor nasa mu'ed ad she'idu bo shlosh pa'amim. It has to be that the ox gores 3 times, and then from that point it's considered to be a shor ha-mu'ed. Okay, question TB20. Heichin stamlon hatana bepirkin kirebi de betarti zimni havi chazaka. Where do we see, like Rebbe, that even 2 times the chazaka? So he said Dinan, it says shahaisa v'lo yalda. If let's say you waited with your wife and she couldn't have children, Rashai hasheni lishais ima sheni v'lo shlishi. So she can get married only a second time, but not a third time. Sheni velo shlishi. So that is again the diuk that we see over here on Samach Dalma Beis. Gir Shumuteres Sheni in Shlishi lo Masdisin Rebihi. Mani Rebihi Desanya Molo da da da. Okay, so therefore we see the din is like Rebbe, which is TB 20. Adkan.